welcome to the Jeff Bullis Show. Today I have with me Edgar Blazona. Now, Edgar started his own furniture company at the age of 17. Most people have trouble actually lying on a sofa at the age of 17, but he started his own furniture company at the age of 17. After being kicked out of high school, we need to find out more about that, Edgar. And he earned his first $400 for selling a self-made table and is now the founder of an 8-figure company. In 2020, when the pandemic hit the entire economy, his company's revenue went up by 100% year over year. Now $10 million plus. His secret being resourceful and rebellious. And we're going to find a little bit more about Rebellious Luxury later. So, thanks, Edgar, for being on the show. It's an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you taking the time and bringing me in.
Yeah. So Edgar and I were talking about the fact that we both weren't wearing headphones today. So this is an experiment of headphoneless podcasting. Edgar's got a hat and I don't. I could get one, but I'm not going to worry about it. So, but Edgar, 17, you got kicked out of school. So how did that happen?
Well, I don't know if I got kicked out of school. I probably would have gotten kicked out of school. I left school. And I look back at those times. I thought, man, I'm this badass teenager. I got it all figured out, the whole deal. And what do I need high school for? And I got to my senior year and it wasn't working for me anymore. I mean, it never really worked. School was always a challenge for me, frankly. I did it because I had to. And I oftentimes put in the bare minimum, right? I was trying to get to the next year, and really just trying to get to the next year of life so that I could get out of my house, get on with my life. And by the time I was a senior in high school, I had left. I left high school. I moved out of my home, and man, I had a secret car for 2 years before my parents even knew. I would park it up the street. I had no license, but I had a sweet car, at 15. And so I was already just kind of ahead of my era, and ready to get on with life. And so I dropped out of high school and I started, I had odd jobs and, working a little construction and, busboy and all that. And then I had my first apartment and I had no furniture and I had no chance of buying furniture. I had no money. And so I got a welder and I figured out how to weld. This is pre-YouTube, right? No one knew how to, you couldn't call a friend. Like, how do I weld? You couldn't look it up on the internet, right? So you're taking these two things, putting them together and seeing do I electrocute myself when I touch these things? What happens? Well, lo and behold, a weld comes out, And so I figured out how to weld and I welded up a table and chairs. And you mentioned it in the opening. I sold it for $400. This was the most money one had ever seen in life. Right. A full stack of $100 bills 4 high, And so, boy, I thought I was rich. And I've been in the furniture business pretty much ever since.
So have you got a picture of what that table looked like?
I do. It's honestly, it's on a Polaroid right now. That is going back. I could probably take a picture of the Polaroid with my iPhone these days, I'll keep it forever.
you could digitize it, yeah?
Yeah. So.
Okay, so if you sold it, it still didn't have a table, it just still didn't have furniture. So what was the so what was the next product? Did you make yourself a bed?
That's a really good point. I that's the first time anyone's ever picked up on that, including me, right? What did I do after? I don't remember, but I tell you what I started to do. I started to find interesting pieces of, marble that had been, the marble top, the corner had been broken off. And so I would, make this marble coffee table and then I would cut out a piece of steel to fit in where the marble corner was, and I'd assemble it. And then I would take those pieces. I had no real way of selling it, right? Again, no internet, right? So I would go out on the street and I would set up almost like a garage sale of these homemade furniture pieces. I would take it down in San Francisco. I grew up in San Francisco, and I would take these pieces like down in front of the bars at night. And I would just sit out on the sidewalk, selling my, 5 coffee tables, a couple stools, maybe a chair, whatever I had made. I would sell those pieces right there on the sidewalk, and pretty much I would never get asked to leave. And I was just, hanging out and selling furniture.
So do you have a license now for driving?
Uh, yes, I do. Yes, I do. Barely. No, it's not that bad.
Yeah. So obviously you managed to drive for 2 years without a license. That's very cool. Try and do that now. That's like you'd be arrested, thrown in jail, and put away.
Well, I have a a young child. I have two. I have a 19-year-old and a 10-year-old. And I look at my 19-year-old. He doesn't look old enough to drive anyway. I would pull him over anyway. Can you imagine what a 15-year-old looks like driving? I mean, boy, I would certainly get pulled over, but I never did. Yeah.
Okay, so you're hustling basically. Were you working full time at the same time?
Um, yeah, probably. Yes, probably had a busboy job or some sort of job. I ended up later on taking a cabinet maker job. I did that for a while, along with doing my own stuff, and I learned a lot in a cabinet shop. Um, I later on I traded space with another cabinet maker in his warehouse. I traded him like a little corner in his cabinet shop
Mhm.
that I could do metal work, and in exchange I would do some metal work for them, free basically.
Right.
And I did that for about a year and a half. I learned a ton about cabinet making and woodworking and all that. I always was watching and really listening, listening to the sounds that the machines were making to try to get a true understanding. You can learn a lot by the sound of a machine, whether it's running correctly, whether it's cutting correctly, all of that stuff. You can just hear so much. And it was a great experience, and really kind of taught me how to woodwork and really set me up for the next stage. Every step you take is a learning experience, or at least it can be if you allow it
Yeah.
to get to the next stage. If you're paying attention, can really elevate you, and you can carry that stuff on forever. And that's really what I did. And that kind of set me up later in life to start a cabinet shop and a small woodworking shop
Right.
and so on.
So it sounds like there's quite an element, a very tactile element of what you did back then.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned things like you could hear the sound of the machine and whether it was working properly or not. And so so obviously something in this making, being a creator, brought you joy. What was that? Are you aware of that?
Yes, 100%. I am 100% a maker, right? I love to make things, and uh, I mean, I do it all the time. It's really what I love. My business today is around what I've made, but now it's a business, right? I have to run it like a business. I still take time. I mean, I'm staring right now. I'm looking out past my computer. I'm looking at a container, a shipping container that I have chopped up into a heated swim up pool bar, right? Like, I mean, if I look to my right out on the front porch, there is a paddle boat uh, that I've converted into a paddle boat go-kart with sound system and wakeboard tower to pull someone behind with a skateboard, right? Like stupid stuff. I love just making things and having fun, and so that's really, I guess that's a big part of what I do, and thank God I'm able to turn that into a living and use my entrepreneurial sense to have fun with it.
So you're making, you're creating, and I think innately, I think all of us as humans are creators. It's just we do it in different ways, whether it's a YouTube video, whether it's writing, whether it's you're doing something much more physical. Um, I think, when did you realize that you were onto something, and when did it start to get serious? You're obviously working in the corner of a colleague's cabinet making shop, and you must sounds like you started to enjoy not only the welding and iron making, but also the woodworking and cabinet making. So,
Yeah.
when did you start to realize that this is something you could really get serious about? When did that happen?
When I sold that first piece of furniture,
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
I knew pretty much right away, and it was really about the money at that particular point.
Survival.
I had grown up as a graffiti artist, and I was using graffiti as my way to be rebellious and still be an artist, and the way to tie those together. However, I turned it into a business. I started a company called Graffiti Graphics, and I basically took my crew of graffiti artists and went out and sold them as a, we'll paint your, music venue. We'll paint for bands. We painted for all the Lollapalooza concerts. Like, we really turned it into a business. And while I wasn't the best graffiti artist, I was good at selling myself. I could sell this young group of, illegals, into a, legal venue, right? And so I knew I had something that was entrepreneurial. When I became a furniture maker, there wasn't a chance that I wouldn't sell this stuff. I wasn't going to be a garage, maker. And later on, I realized that it's going to be a long road to the success that I want, right? Pushing wood through a table saw it's a tough job. Making a kitchen of cabinets is a tough job. And I remember one day pushing these wood through the saw and thinking, I'm never going to get that lake house by doing this. Like, it's too long. It's too hard. It's going to take forever. So I need to learn how to do this at scale.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And that kind of drove that one decision, that one time that I was probably, making, 45 of the same exact part through the saw all day long. I probably learned that I got to do something different. And so I shut my business down and I went to work for Pottery Barn, which is it's a huge retailer here in the US.
We have them here. We have them here, I think, as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And at the time, they were like the biggest thing ever. They were the most popular, the most, like, it was the craze back then. And I went to work for them, and I realized, boy, I'm just going to be stuck here in San Francisco in their office. And so I showed them a few problems, right? I kind of may or may not have, pointed out a few things that I probably elevated as being a problem, so that I could show them that I could fix it, so that I could go to the factories overseas and fix these problems for them. This young kid, 20 something, but I would go and fix it. And soon I became Pottery Barn's fixer. Right. And it was a great time. And what I was really doing, it was eye on the prize, right? I was going there to study these giant factories overseas and figure out, like, okay, now this is how you make something at scale. This is how you build and how you can build a business, right? I had no teachers, I bet you're going to ask me the mentor question. Everyone always asks, well, who is your mentors, right? Well, in a way, that was my mentorship, right? It was these factories that kind of like guided me along and really showed me how to do it at scale.
Yeah. Well, I've never really had a mentor. So for me, I learnt by doing, just like you did, really.
Yeah.
And by watching, and copied a lot of shit.
Yeah. You can pick up a lot. You can find the details, and you can pick up on what works, and that's a big point.
Yeah. So you did that. You're working for Pottery Barn. What was the next step after that?
Well, the next step after that was another company came to me and said, kind of on the hush hush, hey, why don't you leave Pottery Barn, come to work for us? We sell into Walmart and Target, and you can basically copy your stuff from Pottery Barn do it for Walmart and Target and brands like that. And I said, okay, but it's a big price difference, right? So I ended up taking the job, but I ended up having to go back again, China, Indonesia, Vietnam, and teaching these factories how to basically make the same looking designs, but make it for much, much, much cheaper, right? Kind of tricks of the trade. And we did really well. We sold a ton into Walmart and Target. I had an entire aisle at Target once of kids goods. I mean, that's a huge, looking back on that, I had no idea how big that really is, but I mean, gosh, if I could do that today, I'd be a bazillionaire. So it was a good time for sure. And that kind of brought me to the next step. Everything is just a stepping stone if you work it correctly.
Yeah. So you mentioned the term before, rebellious luxury.
Yeah.
So what's rebellious luxury?
Yeah. What is
that? Is that like graffiti artists sort of do a modern apartment?
No, here's the thing with rebellious luxury, right? I mean, there's a group of us out here, and I suspect it's much bigger than we imagine, but there's a group out here that has kind of come up in the last 10, 20 years, that has made some money, right? But that doesn't necessarily fit the norm of this luxury model, right? Like I don't want to go into a store and be called sir, right? I'm not sir, right? I would never call you sir. Like, you're my friend. I would never, oh yes, sir, come on in, like, no way, no, I don't want a freaking latte when I go furniture shopping. I don't want that, right? I go get a Starbucks latte or whatever, if I want. I don't need to be pampered in that way when I'm, say, buying a piece of furniture. Talk to me normal, right? Talk to me like I'm your friend, not retail speak.
Mm-hmm.
So we look at rebellious luxury and we think, okay, what are we rebelling against? Well, first of all, we love luxury products. What is luxury products? If you break that down, it's just quality, right? It's quality with maybe some sirs thrown in, right? Like, how stupid is that, right? So our definition of rebellious luxury is this: a luxury product, a good quality product, without all the fluff, right? Without the lattes, without the sirs, just good quality product that makes you feel good about it. That's a little bit more normal and down to earth.
You're right. So was that rebellious luxury? Is that woven into the BenchMade Modern brand? Is that what
Yes.
BenchMade Modern brand is about? And where did that idea come from?
Well, it comes from, our background, my background in particular.
Yep.
It comes from a desire to have the best quality furniture, right? And when I say that, I always talk a lot about what's under the hood, right?
Yep.
Two companies, a $1,000 sofa and a $4,000 sofa on the internet can look exactly the same, side by side, picture by picture. Wow, they look exactly the same. When you get it, it's a different story. And a lot of what that is what's under the hood, right? What kind of foams does it have? What kind of, frames, springs, all of those things that make the difference, that make the longevity of that sofa last for, forever, really.
Yeah.
So along with those materials, right, and that quality comes a price point. So in finding the right, landing place for us, like, we are a luxury brand, so to speak. We're a higher end quality brand, but in a way, I don't want to be, this Gucci or Prada experience, right? I want to be a more normal experience. I want to be able to show you can have this sofa, have a, family of kids, have, football parties, whatever it might be, but still sit on nice quality stuff. And so we try to weave this rebellious nature. And a lot of it's about our customer. I mean, you could say we're rebellious because we ship faster than, anyone else, really. we make this quality product in a way that's, sewn better and cut better and more precise, all those things are sort of rebelling against that furniture status quo. But at the end of the day, it's about a particular customer, a feeling that I think there's a lot of us out here, old skateboarders that now run companies. There's quite a few.
Yeah. So when you started, how long ago did you start BenchMade Modern?
BenchMade's been around for about 7 years, 6, 7 years, something like that.
Okay. So did you start with a proper bricks and mortar store? Is that where you started?
Well, I used to have a brand called True Modern, and it was a wholesale brand. And I realized with True Modern, I sold to retailers across the company, brick and mortars, and then I sold to the Wayfairs and Amazons and all those guys as well. And when the 2008 crash came, it left me with furniture in two warehouses that weren't selling at all.
Hmm.
Like one piece a week. It was a disaster. And rent bills were piling up at these warehouses, and of course, no income from the furniture. It was a disaster. So I started messing around with sofas, and I realized that wow, sofas are somewhat of a people buy sofas even if the economy's down, because when people are stuck in, then they invite their friends over, and in order to show their wealth, in order to show like, oh, I'm fine, this recession isn't hitting me, they make their sofas great, right?
Hmm.
And so I realized that you could still sell sofas, and so we started moving a lot of sofas, and suddenly I realized like, wow, this is a good business. And from there, I started testing custom sofas. What if I made these sofas custom, right? What would happen? That kind of piggybacked into BenchMade Modern, and it piggybacked into, learning how to make custom sofas on demand in a quick timeline.
So, so you've been to China and Vietnam and all that. So is BenchMade Modern made in America?
Yeah, we're all in the U.S. When I very first started, I built a small factory in Los Angeles, and that's where we really kind of cut our teeth and build our first stuff. And now we're made in between L.A. and Dallas, two different locations.
Right. So obviously you've worked out how to use a lot of automation to actually be able to scale what you do quickly and also beautifully.
Yeah, yeah, we do. We use a bit of automation. It's less than you would imagine. Upholstery, at the end of the day, upholstery goes back to an old school,
Yeah.
pulling fabric over a frame, stretching it, pulling it, and stapling it. I mean, that's really, what upholstery is. There's the tricks we use are all in the cutting of the materials, the cutting of the fabric, all of that go into a quick and seamless system.
Right. So you're making custom and you're also charging a higher price point. So that's why it allows you to manufacture locally.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
on the other hand, everything is done online now.
Yeah, yeah, everything's online. We're a true direct to consumer. And when I say true, a real direct to consumer is from the factory to the consumer, right?
Mm.
That's where it kind of started, direct to consumer. It has morphed into, you know, third party selling, buying it from a factory and really being online first and then selling to the customer. But we really are from the factory all the way to the customer.
So basically, you own the relationship with the customer without any middleman in between,
Exactly. Exactly.
and that is the power of online stores, isn't it? It's disintermediation in that you are removing the middleman.
Yeah, yeah. It's an interesting space. I don't think, you mentioned, before we come on, you said you had a bedding store at one point and a
Yeah,
true brick and mortar store.
yeah,
And I think there's an interesting thing that's happening with brick and mortar. I remember when I first ventured out, I still was running True Modern, a wholesale business, and now a direct to consumer. And some of my stores were complaining, well, you've got this other business. It's free for you. It's free for you to get those customers, right?
hmm
That is not the case. I
No,
mean,
it's not.
it's not free. My customer acquisition costs, our something was $800. That's a lot of money to advertise, to a customer, to get them into your store and to send them a piece of furniture. I mean, it's an enormous amount. So the tables are turning a little bit. I'm interested to see what happens and how omni retailing becomes a better part of our shopping experience.
Yeah. So the interesting thing was, and one of my brother's partners, she runs a curtains and blinds business, and actually a manufacturer as well in Australia.
Okay.
And I remember, and you talked about how you've grown during the pandemic. It's been very interesting. So 2 years ago, everyone thought the sky was going to fall in for homewares.
Uh-huh.
But as everyone went home from the office, they looked at their furniture, they looked at their blinds, and they went, gee, they suck.
Yeah.
And I've got to spend all my time here. Let's make it beautiful. So
Yeah.
she was writing a spreadsheet of sales going through the floor.
Yeah.
But what happened was they went through the roof. How was your experience?
It was the same way. Honestly, I am slightly embarrassed about this particular topic, and I'll explain why. I frankly I try to avoid it a bit because it makes me feel bad. I happen to be in a position where I'm running a company that people seem to need my product in a time where a lot of people were really struggling. Like a lot of people were really struggling.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so yes, I saw the business skyrocket through the roof. I mean, through the roof, right? And I struggled at the time about that a little bit, and yes, it's great for business and all that. However, we were having a hard time manufacturing. At one point, we shut our factories down and we're making masks, right? Because we can sew and we can make we had fabric and all that. This is before we even really knew what a mask did, but we needed them, and I ended up giving sofas away to nurses.
Wow.
I felt like I couldn't contribute, and I felt like we were gaining because of this pandemic. And so I started just like nominate a nurse, right? Show me someone who's really like working way too much and is really struggling, and let me reach out to them and give them a sofa. And we would do it. We would find these nurses and we would say, hey, I can't help you in the hospitals. I can't help you fix this problem, but I can make sure when you're on your off time that you're sitting in something wonderful and comfy. And this is what I can do for you. And we really did that. And at least it kind of made me feel better about capitalizing on such a horrible time for many.
Yeah, and the whole hospitality industry, restaurants, hotels, travel industry were just hammered and still are recovering. And and like even people that came in to clean your house. Like I know that I had a cleaner and I just kept paying her during the pandemic, even though she couldn't come in. I was saying, I don't want her to suffer, and also a little bit of personal interest as well, because I want to make sure I still got her when we come out.
Totally. Yes. Yes. I know what you mean.
So, what are some of the challenges with like getting customers online, because it's a very crowded space and you've got to get your message out? So what's some of your secret sauce? What are some of your tactics for acquiring customers? Is it search engine? Is it Facebook ads? Is it what is it?
Well, in all honesty, those two things you just mentioned are kind of like the lowest of the table stakes. It's yes, we spend an enormous amount on advertising with Google search, Facebook, Instagram, and all that. But where we're seeing growth is really, through influencers, through press. Affiliate marketing is just, going crazy, right? So you've got like sites out there like Wirecutter is a great example, right? We, for 2 years in a row, we were best online sofa, right? Best online sofa. That's a huge deal for New York Times Wirecutter, review site. Now, that particular site actually did take the furniture in, reviewed it, and actually sat on it, loved it, and all that. And we're super excited about it. A lot of these affiliate people, they don't necessarily do that. And so we like the ones that truly do that. We like to participate because I'm really proud of what we make. And in fact, it's funny, if you go to my Twitter page, Edgar Blazona, at Twitter, the pinned tweet is old school style. Hey, all you furniture people, how about this? You send your best piece of furniture to a writer. I'll send my best piece of furniture to the writer. They can decide which is best, and whoever wins gets to be publicly crowned Sofa King. That's it, period. Like old school battle, right?
Yeah.
I know all those guys follow me. I know they're on my account, Yeah. I haven't had a single person reply to that. It's been like almost 2 years, right? So
Okay.
I really love when we get to show our stuff, let people sit on it, cut it open, like dig into it, see what's inside. That's the first thing I do is cut the sofa bottom off. Let me look inside and see what you got.
Right. So your best marketing tactics are to get really good reviews, number one.
Yes. Yeah.
Work with
Affiliate.
influencers. Work with influencers, number two, and number three. Also work with um, affiliates. In other words, people that reach your audience that already have a crowd.
I think the affiliates is probably, number one or number two.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Is that your top three? Those three?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you got to have them all, right?
Yeah.
And they all mesh together, right? So there really isn't a one secret sauce.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago when people would raise money through investment, and they would look for the special sauce, right? And you would okay, well, I'll just pour some money on it, some gas, so to speak, right? But those days are kind of over, and it's really a mesh of all the things coming together and lining up, and they all kind of sit on top of one another. And if you don't have one, then you don't have the next, and so on.
Yeah, I think the old sales funnel model is broken. Sorry, it's more the matrix now.
Yes, but I would argue that there are what I like to call micro conversions within the sales funnel, right?
Oh yeah.
And so you bring them down that sales funnel. We have this amazing box of swatches, and I take pride in that as well. It's really a signal, right? You come to my site and you shop around and think, okay, let me get some swatches. I don't know. And we send you this box second day, right? Comes 2 days later. It's this giant, like 12 by 12 box that comes in the mail with 100 big pieces of fabric cuts in it, swatches, leather, fabric, and all that. When it shows up at your door, it's like, man, we mean business. Like, this is the real deal. You are not just going to give your credit card to us and we're going to send you this piece of junk sofa. It's the real deal. And so that's a micro conversion. And when I can get you to there, all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, I can see it. I can feel it, and then the next, as you drive down a little bit farther, we send you a full scale drawing. We send this giant piece of paper that you roll out on the ground. It's of your exact custom size sofa, right? Giant corner sectionals, these huge pieces of paper you mesh together and overlay them. You could sit on and see if your family fits between the lines, and all my family fit on all the cushions and all that. That's just one more step in that sales funnel that keeps you excited and inspired to buy a sofa.
So you're working on a very tactile level as well as small commitments.
I love that. Yes. Yeah, I love a little tactile, right?
Yeah. Well, that's why I raised it, because at the beginning of our conversation, you said you love the sound of the saw in the workshop.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you're sending beautiful pieces of fabric to people so they actually can feel what you're going to give to them.
Yes.
And produce for them.
Yeah.
And you know what? So I'm not a big online shopper. And the reason why is because I like, if I buy some clothes, I want to feel what the fabric's like. Is it like
Yep.
sandpaper or is it actually beautiful and soft? And will it feel good on my skin?
Yes.
Very hard to do that online.
It is hard to do that online. And when we have these great policies, keep it for 100 days or whatever, but you got you got places like Zappos shoes. They really were a big inventor of that. Like,
Yeah.
just,
Yep.
we'll send you some shoes, try them on. They don't work, send them back, right? Sofas are a little bit different because you got to schedule this delivery guy. They got to get in your house. Hopefully they don't damage your house. All that stuff can go wrong. I mean, it's just, or it could go great, and mostly goes great, but you got to take the time to do all that, right?
Hmm.
And so you can't just return a sofa super easy. It's not like just send it back, tape the box up and send it back. So I try to, you know, give you an experience that helps move that along. Now let me just say, there is a little secret to that, right? There's a little selfish secret to that you probably didn't think of. I send all that stuff to you to get you vested
Hmm.
in the experience
Yeah. Yeah.
and in the sofa, right?
Yep.
Now you're like, I chose this fabric, right? I rubbed it on my dog to see if hair stuck to it. I poured wine on the fabric to see if it was stain proof.
Hmm.
I made it custom to my wall, right? This wasn't just, will it fit? I'll order it, right?
Hmm.
I've tested it with my family. They can all fit on it, right? Lo and behold, that keeps my returns very, very low
Hmm.
because you've gone through this process ahead of purchasing, right? And now you receive this sofa that you love, that you're expecting, and you're not shocked when it gets there and it's sandpaper, as you said.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a micro commitment. It's tactile. You're getting to own it before they own it. Um,
Exactly. And
so
they designed it, they built it, they made it, they customized it.
yeah, it's a little bit like they call the IKEA effect. Is also a little bit of part of that. Is that they've discovered that actually making IKEA furniture, despite the frustrations,
Yes, yes, yes,
is that
yes.
I made this,
Yeah.
even though the panel's round the wrong way,
Yes, yes, totally.
and I've got 5 bolts and screws left over, and I'm not quite sure
Yeah,
where they should
totally.
go.
And hope to hell I don't have to move in 3 months, because what am I going to do in 3 months? Yeah, I've had a few IKEA pieces back in the
Yeah.
day. I
Now,
know, I
now,
know the story.
now the thing you did mention was about delivering, and also getting into the house, and I do remember, like, you got a king size mattress, you got a king size bed, and you're delivering it to an apartment, and there are certain apartments that are very difficult to get a big piece of
Yes,
furniture into. So
yes,
um, I'm sure you've struck occasional challenges,
a lot.
yeah, to get a big sofa into a
Yeah.
small apartment where the entry area is uh, impossible. I've had an apartment where I actually had to deliver it via scissor lift to level 5
Yep.
um, terrace.
Yep. Yep. We've done that. We don't typically do that. Liability reasons, we won't do that. However, we've been involved with many, drop it off at the crane operators, or, that sort of thing. They'll take
Yep.
ownership of it, and so on. We have a model that we flag every order that's, I think 85 inches, maybe it's 90 inches now, that we'll call you and we'll talk to you about that experience, right? Well,
Yeah.
did you think of that? Because along with, you can make it up to 12 feet, or 10 feet, 10 and a half feet, I think. Along with that comes, can I get it in the home? So while it fits great on the wall, can I get it around this corner?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
oftentimes you can't. And
Yeah.
so we talk to the customer, we talk them through that, and
Yep.
we'll accommodate when we can. Sometimes we'll make it into a 3-piece sofa versus a 2 sofa to get the sizes a little smaller. We try to do whatever we can to make sure that exact experience doesn't happen, because at the end of the day, when that happens, you're now taking a probably damaged sofa because you try to cram it through some weird opening, and now you're sending it back, and then we have to deal with it. So it's in our best interest to make sure that we kind of teach you that experience, how to get it in. A lot of that is not, carrying the sofa in horizontally, unless you have a straight shot. When we go around turns, we go around upright, like a refrigerator, right? And we swivel, and then we tip down and go in through the door. Instead of trying to wrap around the corner. Most people don't even think of that. So a lot of times what we want to know is, how high is your ceiling? That's one of the first questions we ask.
Yeah. Yes. Delivery is actually a creative process.
Yeah. That's the hardest part. Making a custom sofa incredibly quick is a lot easier than delivery. I'm glad I'm not in the delivery business. That's for sure.
Yeah. No, I get that, mate. I've had to deliver big pieces of furniture into small spaces, and it's and you got to think creatively.
I learned, back when I very first started, we were kind of struggling, and I thought, you know what, I got a truck. I'm going to deliver all my Bay Area deliveries, right? I live in the Bay Area. Anything that goes, I'm going to deliver it to our offices, and then I'm going to deliver it myself to the door, to save $200 a delivery. That's a lot of money, right? So I got my BenchMade Modern shirt on, and I would go there in my regular old truck, and I'd bring my dolly, and I'd bring a guy sometimes if I was going inside. And this was a really good hands-on learning experience. It taught me a lot. And it taught me what the scale of our stuff looked like in people's homes. It taught me who our customer was. It also taught me, interestingly enough, how to be a little nicer to the delivery people, right? And people tend to treat the delivery people with anger. They go into it with, this is going to be a horrible experience, and this guy's going to wreck my house and wreck my sofa and all that. And I often would show up, and one of the guy in particular, he said, I bought white glove service, and I'm like, well, sir, my paperwork shows me you just have curbside. Look, I have every order at access on my phone. I know exactly what this guy is, whatever. And I said, I'm happy to unbox it, and I'm happy to help you carry it in. He says, well, I got white glove. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I just don't have that. I'm happy to help you carry it in. So finally he says, okay, we'll carry it in together, and he carries it in with me, and kind of gives me some attitude along the way and all that. And at the end, I always used to on my way out, I would put my hand out, and the look of shock when the delivery person puts their hand out to shake your hand, like that doesn't happen. And I would say, as I put my hand out, I'm Edgar Blazona. I'm the designer and owner of the brand. I'm so happy you purchased from us. Thank you very much. And I would put my hand out, and, he shook my hand, and you could just see reading across his face was, oh my God, I have been such a jerk, And I remember walking away, and I was like, that's one for the delivery people, that's maybe one less time will those guys just be a jerk to the delivery people.
Yeah, I know. And I used to do deliveries myself as well from the store. I had people that did deliveries for me as well, but I'd do it quite regularly. And so I know totally what delivery issues can be.
Yes.
Been there, done that.
It's a different animal.
Yeah. So, Edgar, just to wind things up here, what's some of the top tips, and I suppose maybe a focus on selling online, what's some of your top tips to our listeners and viewers that you'd like to share that you've learned along the way about selling online, because that's what you do, and also direct to customer. So what's two or three top tips or just one tip, whatever you think would be most relevant?
I think my top tips would be something about, look, there's a lot of noise, right? And this is a tough question, actually, right? Because a lot of it comes from being true to yourself, true to your product, right? It depends on what you're selling. Like if you're selling, 1,000 things, you're aggregating all this product, it's very hard to be true to yourself, right? Unless you're like, I don't know, a car parts guy, but you're actually a car parts guy. Like you actually care about cars and car
Yeah.
parts. You're not just selling car parts, right? It's the sites, it's the places that are actually true to who they are. And I think it's really relevant in the voice. I think people don't put enough energy into the voice, because the voice is really what makes you legitimate and makes you a true, Amazon doesn't need a voice, right? They almost don't want a voice because they're a true aggregate. Their voice is, we'll get it there for you tomorrow or whatever, whatever timeline is. And you don't care about their voice. But if it's outside of that, having a true to yourself, true to your product voice, I think is really important. And people take notice on that.
Yeah, I totally agree with it. So I started my bedding furniture store because I wanted to make money. It wasn't authentic me, and guess what? It didn't work.
Yeah.
Okay. But you live and breathe what you do. You built it with your hands when you were 17.
Yes.
You've been in the trenches. You've gone to factories in Asia. You've built your own, manufacturing plants in the US. You've delivered yourself. So you're being incredibly authentic. You have your voice, and I think so. What you're talking about is your brand voice. The more authentic it is, the more powerful it is. Is that what you're saying?
That is what I'm saying. And it really rings true on every word on your website, right?
Yep.
And even if we all know, look, people don't read paragraphs, people don't, they're looking for imagery, they're not looking to, deep dive. There's a small handful of people that actually deep dive into a website, but most people are looking for signaling. And if you can stay true to that with all of those points, and at the end of the day, it all comes together as your voice. I think that's one of the most powerful things you can have on your site, no matter what kind of thing you're selling.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have trouble selling anything I don't believe in.
Yeah, well, but a good
story.
salesman can sell anything, right? I mean, that's the whole thing. But then they're cheesy salesmen, and there's nothing I hate worse than a cheesy salesman.
That's right. If you speak with an authentic voice, then it's very, very powerful. That's what I've discovered.
Yeah,
And I just can't sell something I don't believe in. And
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And that's one of the reasons why I get so freaking excited about what we do. I mean, look, I make sofas. We kind of joke, right? There's all this stuff going on in the war, the world, Ukraine is happening right now as we're speaking about this. And there's all these, COVID and all this like real heavy stuff. And what do? I make furniture, right? It's like how silly, but at the same time, like it's what I love. It's my passion. And so it excites me. And while I can't solve Ukraine, I can't solve COVID, I can make sure at the end of the day, you're sitting on something comfortable and you're relaxing and thinking about solving the problems that you're good at.
It's fantastic. You're a maker and creator that knows how to sell, and you've learnt by doing rather than doing a degree or even a carpentry course. So it's pretty powerful. I can see the passion shining through in your eyes and your voice and your energy, mate. It's really, it's fabulous.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for sharing your passion with us and your authenticity. And
thank you.
I get that, and that's to be celebrated. And thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And if you do decide you need a sofa, you can come on down. Here's the salesman guy. Come on down and get a discount with Jeff 15. And we'll give you a 15% discount. And you can use that at any time.
Yeah, the home office sofa. There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Where you can nap at 3 and work at 5.
Yeah, right? Totally. But we'll send you a printout and make sure you can fit between the arms. Come on down.
Thanks. It's been an absolute pleasure, Edgar.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's been fun kind of reliving some of these stories. Thanks.
Been a pleasure.